and Crew, Season 1, Episode 8 Thoughts. This episode is called The Real Good Guys. I came close to loving this episode, and let's see, spoilers for everything Star Wars leading up to and including this episode, and I think the episode is rated like 12 plus, so will this video be, and yeah, right, real quick. Probably going to do the, as far as I understand, there's only going to be one season of this, so we're probably going to do the spoiler-free review, I'm thinking tomorrow, and let's see, after that I will start some other show. I think it might be Marvel, but I do have a different idea as well. Regardless of what show I do next, after I've done one season of that, I will do another season of The Walking Dead, whether or not the next show I do is Marvel. Yeah, let's dive right into this episode. So a couple of things that I really loved to balance out some of my criticisms. It's clear that the people working on this show really love lightsabers, X-wings, and like I guess those are especially the ones that yeah. I really appreciate that for how much they clearly love them, they are using, throughout this season, they use them very sparingly, because I do think that is how you best, yeah. Right, force powers, I think, was the third thing, yeah. I think that is about, yeah, I thought they did a good job following up on, basically, this is the, if not series, at least season finale, and yeah, the four kids get to, all get to do something important, and at least some of the parents get to be part of it. Let's see, I guess Neil's, no, yeah, Neil's parents were also, like, or did they know? Yeah, I'm not sure they were super involved, but then they weren't really seen to be, like, to the same extent. Like, they were worried about Neil, but it was very much, like, it was especially, I think his name is Wendell, Wim's dad, and Farah, Fern's mom. They were very much like, listen, kid, you gotta do this way. This is how it has to be. And that was also a thing. I was a little worried that Wendell was gonna keep being a stick in the mud throughout the episode. I don't need stories like this to get the parents involved. Most of the ones I know like this don't. But if you're going to feature them this much near the end of the story, yeah, they really have to get on board with the program, or it's just going to be really irritating. So I appreciate that he did end up with that. He even gets, makes Chase after, the hyperbike leaves on a whim. I mean, Wim leaves on the hyperbike. It was pretty cheesy that they actually have the bicycle bell, but I don't know. I kind of liked it. Yeah, yeah. So Wim finally makes it work for him that he comes up with these outrageous stories. It manages to distract Jod. Somewhere Star-Lord is smiling, at least the Chris Pratt version anyway. Let's see, Fern agrees to work with Wim despite her earlier reluctance, both in, the story and, holding on to the lightsaber, which is also, the moment that, like, at first Jod is like, really, kid? And it does sound completely ridiculous. And then when Fern joins in, then Jod's like, what's going on? You two can't stand each other. He's been with them for almost the entire adventure. And let's see, KB, gets the ship into the air, and I mean, she must have gotten, yeah, she, off screen, she got SM-33 working again, because he was completely still for a while there after the head cutting. Yeah. let's see. And Neil, again shows under the right circumstances he is willing to engage in at least some acts of violence so as to protect people. He just doesn't want it to be his whole thing. And that was a really great, I was wondering if that was gonna be, Chekhov's gigantic AA laser, and yeah, pretty happy with that. And I think that does pretty well get us to, so a couple of, I swear I'm not going to go off on a whole thing. I did internally debate that mentally. I will just say I could have gone off on a major thing, Kathy Bates Misery style, about how, but this, the opening of this episode cheats the ending of the last one. It seemed like one thing was happening very definitively, and then, he just turns off the lightsaber. I'm gonna move on. Yeah, let's see. I think one of I will talk some about. So this episode gives us the answers that there have been mysteries in the episodes before this one, and here we get the answers. And this is one of those cases where the fan theories were better than the answers we got, and I don't think that the writers on this realized how much people were going to read into these things. But this is Star Wars, we're going to, and I do think that before I get more into the answers and the theories and such, I did just briefly want to say, this is yet another case of, Disney Plus original shows like this kind of struggling with the ending. It's true of other Star Wars shows. It's true of most of the MCU shows as well. The ones specific to Disney Plus, not the... I'm not talking about the ones that are now on Disney Plus, but were not originally made for Disney Plus. So, let's see. One major theory, I guess I'll maybe cover multiple, but among the major theories were that this planet was hidden by the First Order and, was basically funding and perhaps part of how, funding the First Order, part of how they were keeping hidden, which helps explain, which honestly, I think maybe I will just be happy with what we got on Ahsoka, because honestly, that does do a lot of legwork for explaining how the First Order were able to be so powerful despite the New Republic. But I do think it is... I think it would have been great if near the end of the episode we just briefly saw that when the barrier was shut down over at Atten, it also shut down a similar barrier over Starkiller Base, and that's why no one had found it before. And, just a brief clip of, I forget his name, but the sniveling guy who gives the speech about the last day of the Republic. That voice got a little bit more Emperor and a little less him, but yeah, that guy, just a brief cut to him, and, someone says, "Sir, the barrier's down," and he says, "No matter, we are ready to, we will be ready to fire shortly," something like that, so, yeah, I think that does pretty much cover, or, we thought that maybe the supervisor's identity was a twist, but it just wasn't one that really meant that much ultimately. I heard a theory that it was going to turn out to be the captain of the Onyx Cinder, and you know, I forget if I heard someone else say it or if I myself thought it, but, you know, it could have been a First Order person. Yeah. The fact that it's a giant droid, I think could resonate thematically, but I don't think they quite stick the landing on it because it is this thing of, you know, throughout this show, we've had this thing of, you know, this is the suburbs, nothing exciting happens there, and then here at the end, pirates invade, you know. Hollywood has made multiple stories about the suburbs, peace and tranquility being disturbed. You know, it might be Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, and here it's pirates. And the fact that the droid, you know, the supervisor is a droid, you know, and has been cut off, like you know, the supervisor says, the last I heard, Jedi were traitors, which means that the supervisor has not heard anything. You know, we also see it's all dusty and such. You know, nobody goes there anymore. You know, presumably they did during the High Republic era. And it does seem like the planet was indeed just like a bank for that. Which is just, it's a little bit of a letdown for, you know. And that's also like, okay, so the great work was all about creating wealth and protecting it from outsiders, and it just feels, again, there's something there, but they don't quite go there, because that is, I think, and this is going to sound harsh, and I appreciate that the show is rated 12+, I think it would have landed more if the show ended with them basically as refugees, if At-Aten was destroyed by the invading force because it was so corrupt. It focused so much on gold, and it was too adherent to rules. And, you know, in general, we need more stories. This is something that Disney, for its many faults, has done reasonably on. They've made multiple refugee stories, although every so often the refugees will actually turn out there's something about them that, you know, yeah, it's not even a spoiler to say Falcon the Winter Soldier and Secret Invasion both have, you know, I'm not saying whether or not it's all or even most, but there's at least some characters on there that are refugees that are evil. But then we also have other stories, which I'm not sure I can really mention which, but I'll just say Disney has done other stuff recently. But yeah, you know, I get that that's very upsetting, that's very dark, but I really don't think, because like at the end of the day, like, yeah, all that the gold stuff meant was that they ended up becoming a target for pirates, and the pirates were dealt with pretty quickly. Like, I don't know if they did very much damage, like the ship crashing there at the end due to the X-Wings, that might have done some damage. Disney probably does need to get better at, you know, how to depict, or rather avoid depicting collateral damage. That did feel a little bit like, I mean, could they not have had a thing of like, oh, they radio, or whatever the Star Wars equivalent radio is, the frigate, and says, you know, we don't want to shoot you down over this, you know, populated area, please surrender, and the pirates say never. Maybe even start shooting at the X-Wings, forcing the X-Wings to do it, but yeah. I also thought that, you know, once the supervisor is shut down, you know, yeah, with the supervisor, I don't think I've said in this video yet, we have this idea of, like, stagnation, you know, again, dust on the consoles, hasn't heard from anyone since the days of the Old Republic, you know, so the end of Revenge of the Sith is the last time that the supervisor heard anything, for, you know, hasn't gotten any orders during the Galactic era, which I appreciate is also one of these things of like, well, they rely less on robots, on droids, you know. But the New Republic also haven't gotten, and I get, you know, they couldn't contact them. I'm not saying they should have been able to contact them, but it doesn't really land the thing about stagnation, because at the end of the day, they still had the big laser gun to take out, and the supervisor pretty quickly saw through. That's the thing. If you didn't have this thing of like, oh, but I know Jedi or traitor, so which are you? Are you a liar or a Jedi? Or a traitor? Yeah. Think about how I'm sorry. I do think it would have hit harder if it turned out that the droid was 100% on board with Jod just because of his appeal to authority. But instead, it just says, no, I know you're not really the authority figure here, so nah. And that doesn't really do anything. I also thought they were going to do a thing of like, oh, once the supervisor is taken out, all the robot security guards are immediately disabled, which tells me someone working on this is a Phantom Menace fan. I thought they were going to do a thing of like, because they've kind of been implying, maybe this is kind of a fascist state. There's a lot of traits of fascism on Adatin in previous episodes, but then they just call in, I mean, I'm fairly confident this is set after the end of the original trilogy, so this is the New Republic. This is not the Rebel Alliance flying X-wings. Certainly, I feel like with the Rebel Alliance, they had their hands full for the entire OT, so I don't think they would be sending this many, fighters to stop pirates. I mean, they'd send their sympathies for sure, but they couldn't spare this many ships. Think about how much they lost during the Death Star. Yeah. And I mean, if hypothetically there had been a second Death Star, which would have been ridiculous, obviously, like, come on, be a little more creative, George. I'm sure they would have lost a bunch there too. But yeah, see, I thought that it was going to be maybe kind of an ACAB thing, but it turns out it's slightly leaning towards propaganda. With no, it's just local security you can't trust. You need the bigger, which I don't know. It's just I do not think that is the kind of message we need right now. We need more class solidarity and less trusting authority figures. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, the droid, the supervisor was, and that's, yeah, the supervisor, if not for the fact that Jod took it out, it really seems like it would have been, yeah, because it starts to with the security. Yeah, it was about to stun him. It's really only the fact that he had a lightsaber, so it wasn't really that it was unprepared for pirates so much as it was unprepared for a Jedi that managed to trick, I guess, was it the supervisor that was tricked into giving the access? Yeah, the letting the ship through because it said it had an emissary on it. So it doesn't even really work like that either. Yeah, I hope they get better. I believe that they can get better. There's a lot of talented people working at Disney, so, and I do think, yeah, to be clear, get better at endings. I do think they have gotten better at, like, some of the early stuff. I do maintain this is one of the, it's one of my personal favorites of the Disney Plus Star Wars shows. So, I think that does pretty well cover. Right, yeah, I like that, the big thing for Farah is to intervene even when, her training says she has to go with what authorities do, and with the supervisor gone, she doesn't quite know what to do because there's no one telling her what to do. I do think that was a good, she succeeds because she listens to someone who knows better. That I think really worked. And yeah, sometimes the people who know better are, 12-year-olds. Like, it's, I still think it's ridiculous that, like, Greta Thunberg even had to give these speeches and do her activism, that there weren't already enough politicians with sufficient power who were doing the things she said to do. But yeah, she's an inspiration, absolutely. Yeah, come to think of it, there is probably a little bit of Thunberg going on with Fernberg here in the finale. And Wendell, I do like that, for so much of it, he's been like this, though, oh, I can't break the rules kind of thing. And then, Wim is like, oh, but we'd have to restore power. Son, you're talking to a level 7 engineer, or whatever it was, yeah, that is the thing, like, and that is also, I know that when I was 12, sometimes I needed to take a step back and think, you know what, sometimes parents do know what they're talking about. It's not always, for sure, but yeah. And I think that might just about... Yeah, I like that Jod, as he realizes he's lost, he stands there, he accepts his fate. It would feel really out of character if he started, like, whining or something. Like, it's not that he never, ever whines on the show, but when he does, it's because he's trying to figure out how he could still win. Now he accepts that he's lost, so he doesn't whine. Yeah, the reveal about, yeah, he was trained by... he got a little bit of training from a Jedi, and then that Jedi, was killed because of Order 66, and they made him watch. That was, kind of just what we already kind of figured a little bit. It wasn't the most, like, I mean, I guess it was that, or maybe he was a youngling, but then, why wasn't he much, much better with the Force? It just... I'm not saying they had to, like, name the exact Jedi or something, but it kind of seemed... I feel like at the end of the day, it really was just, like, it's just his tragic backstory. There's not really anything more to it than that. And I do think that's too bad. It's... He is, Batman if it were a dead Jedi and he grew up poor, instead of dead parents. And that's just kind of underwhelming for something that... I mean, essentially, we could have learned that a bunch of episodes ago. It didn't really change anything. Like, it's the explanation for why he's quite so ruthless. He really does not have... he is, in a way, the polar opposite of Wim. Wim keeps thinking the Jedi are all, the answer. That's how, problems are resolved, and this whole thing, and just... Yeah, and he's just like, no, that they can lose, Right, I do appreciate, now that we know that the supervisor believes all Jedi are traitors, that does explain why the robot... I think it was the robot, I'm pretty sure it was the robot, when Wim asked, or, yeah, in the first episode, I guess not asked, he said he wanted to be a Jedi. Well, let's see, I don't think he used the word Jedi, but everybody around knew. And yeah, there was something about, like, oh, no, we're sufficiently protected by the security droids, like, because for, as cold as robots sometimes can be, this robot still doesn't want to tell a 12-year-old in front of all his classmates, you want to be a Jedi? But the Jedi are traitors, what's wrong with you?